Hello operators and welcome back to another 0-hour video. Today we are going to be talking about the new recoil system that will be coming with Operation Blackdown update. As recently announced on the official Discord channel, a lot of work is going into making weapons feel and behave more realistic. There is obviously the new bullet penetration system that many of you are excited about, and I will try to demonstrate it another time. But today I thought I would show you how the new upward kick and horizontal recoil feels like in the current work in progress version of Operation Blackdown update. Once again, what you're about to see in this video is subject to changes before the final release of Operation Blackdown update. For this comparison, I customized the weapons to be exactly like they are in the current live version of the game. We will have a look at how they perform in single fire mode, then full auto mode, and then we will do a side-by-side comparison of the weapon recoil in the current version of the game versus the R.O.D.E version for each mod and each weapon. So, without further ado, let's compare how the different weapons behave in the current live version versus the R.O.D.E build. So let's start with the SCAR. Single fire. Pretty stable even when firing quickly. Now let's have a look at the R.O.D.E version. Pay attention to the new sound effects. A little bit more recoil and I can't shoot as fast as the live version. Okay, now let's compare the two. I think it's pretty much the same. There might be a little bit more recoil, vertical recoil on the R.O.D.E version. Okay, now let's check in full auto. I'm only holding for a couple of seconds just to see how it performs with a couple of shots, and the vertical recoil with this is pretty good on the live version. Now let's have a look at Brady full auto, and the grouping is alright. Most of the shots are in target. Okay, now let's have a look at the R.O.D.E version. We can already see that the recoil is different. The horizontal recoil kicks in and my shots kind of like move towards the shoulders, while in the live version it was more towards the head. And the grouping on the full auto it's not quite the same. Yeah, it's a lot harder to control, like a lot harder. Yeah, I think we will better see in this side-by-side comparison. In the live version you can clearly see that the second shot always goes towards the head, while in the R.O.D.E version with the horizontal recoil, it's not a guaranteed headshot. Okay, let's have a look at the M4. Yeah, on single fire it's like a laser. It barely moves. Look at this grouping. Now let's have a look at the R.O.D.E version. I'd say it's very much the same. Maybe the horizontal recoil makes it slightly harder to control the weapon when you shoot faster, but overall it's still pretty good. I think we can see this better in the side-by-side comparison, and overall we can see it's very much the same, but I think I want to be slightly slower in the R.O.D.E version because of the horizontal recoil. I think in full auto is where we're gonna be seeing the biggest differences, and we can see that the second shots always go towards the head, but sometimes towards the shoulder as well, so it's not as accurate as the SCAR. In full auto though, I think, yeah, it's going to be all over the place. Nice grouping actually. Okay, now let's have a look at the R.O.D.E version. It's very much the same, at least when I fire a couple of shots. It goes a little bit more towards the left sometimes. Let's have a look at the full auto. I think that's gonna be interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Now let's have a look at the side-by-side. I think we can clearly see that in the R.O.D.E version, the horizontal recoil takes the weapons towards the left a little bit more, especially when I fire only a couple of shots. But in full auto is where I think we will see it's a lot harder for me to control the weapon. See, it goes all over the place a lot more. Now let's have a look at the AKM. In single fire this weapon is an absolute laser. Look at how accurate it is. It's amazing, always on point. However, if I start firing a little bit quicker, it's a little bit harder for me to control the recoil, and it's easy to miss. Now let's have a look at the OBD version. Pay attention to the new sound effects as well, and you can see that in single fire, when you take your time and you shoot slowly, it's still very accurate. But as you start firing quicker, then you can see that again it loses on the accuracy, and it's a lot less grouped because of the new horizontal recoil. So it goes all over the place now. Okay, now it would be easier for me to show you in the side by side. As you can see in single fire, when you take your time, it's very accurate in both versions. However, when you start firing quicker in single fire mode, it goes all over the place, especially in the OBD version. Now let's have a look at the full auto mode, which I wouldn't recommend using anyway, but pay attention to the second shots and where it lands. It's right between the shoulders and the center of the target, and it's still kind of like very much towards the head. It's not too much towards the outside. Now if we have a look at the full auto mode, which again I wouldn't recommend, it's obviously all over the place, but it's still within the target, so it's fairly easy to control. Now if we have a look at the OBD version, and again pay attention to where the second shot lands, as you can see at the beginning, they still lands between the shoulders and the center of the target and kind of like in the middle, but as I keep firing, the horizontal recoil kicks in and my shots are more towards the outside of the target, so close to the edge. In full auto though, as you can see, it's all over the place, even more than the live version. We probably see that better in the side-by-side comparison. But pay attention again to where the second shot lands. As you can see on the left side, it's kind of like, you know, if you imagine the column in the center of the target, it's where it's aligned with the heads, but in the OBD version, it's closer to the edge of the target. And in full auto, again, I have a few shots that probably were outside the target. Now let's have a look at the MP5 SD. In single fire, this weapon is pretty accurate, but it doesn't deal a lot of damage. So ideally, you would shoot a lot faster, if not maybe in full auto, which has a lot of recoil. But let's have a look at the single fire in the live version when I start firing quicker, and as you can see, it's already a strong vertical recoil. The horizontal recoil is kind of alright though. Now let's see how it performs in the OBD version. The single fire is still pretty strong, especially when you shoot slowly. Very accurate, always on target, always on point, really good. But as I start firing a lot quicker, and you will see, the horizontal recoil kicks in, and I start having a lot more shots towards the shoulders and the edges of the target. Let's have a look at the side-by-side comparison. Single fire, taking my time. It feels like it's more accurate in the OBD version. But when I start firing a lot quicker, even still in single fire mode, you will see that the weapon starts going towards the right side a lot more, especially on the OBD version. Now let's have a look at the full auto mode. And again, as you can see, the first and the second shots are pretty much aligned. It's like there's a line between the center of the target and the head, so it's very easy to get a body shot and a headshot. And in full auto, it's actually kind of the same. You do have a few shots going to the left and the right, but overall, there is this straight line. In the OBD version though, as I keep firing, more of my shots go towards the right and the left shoulders of the target, so there is no straight line between the center of the target and the head. And in full auto, you will see that I have a few more shots going outside the target, and it's not a straight line between the center and the head of the target. You know the drill, let's have a look at the side-by-side. So again, full auto, just firing a couple of shots, and you can see that the shots in the live version are more grouped compared to the one in the OBD version. So it's a little bit harder to get a guaranteed headshot with just a couple of shots in full auto. And in full auto, you can see that I had more shots landing on the head in the live version and a lot missed in the OBD version. The MP7 is an absolute killer. Look at how accurate it is in the live version. Even when I start firing a little bit quicker, it's still on target. And let's see if it's the same in the OBD version with the horizontal recoil. So far so good. Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's a lot harder for me to stay on target with the new horizontal recoil. It would be even more obvious in the side-by-side, but I really like this new horizontal recoil system because it prevents you from simulating a full auto with a script or hack, although your weapon is in single fire mode. So it's a pretty good system and it works. Now let's have a look at the full auto mode. Look at where the second shot lands. It's always, again, this straight line between the center of the target and the head. But it's a little bit harder to get a guaranteed headshot. They are mostly body shots, and the full auto mode is still within the target. So I don't really expect any major changes in the R.O.D.E version. Even with the horizontal recoil, the second shot will still remain within the chest area, basically. So a main body shot. However, with a full auto on, yeah, it's a little bit harder to stay within the target, and some of my shots landed outside the target. I think it will be clear in the side-by-side, but you can clearly see that between the live version and the R.O.D.E version, it's pretty much the same when you fire a couple of shots. It's still very much accurate, close to the center of the target. But when you start going full auto, you can really see that in the R.O.D.E version, my weapon starts going towards the top left and even out of the target. Now let's have a look at the MAC-10, which I believe is going to become a lot more popular once the R.O.D.E version and the weapon customization system is live. In single fire mode, as you can see, it's very accurate, very nice grouping. And even when I start shooting a lot faster, it feels like it's not accurate and it's going all over the place, but when you look at the grouping, it's still very much in the center of the target. Now, is this going to be the same with the new horizontal recoil system in the R.O.D.E update? Let's have a look. In single fire, it's pretty much the same, but I try to shoot a little bit quicker than in the live version, and you can clearly see that it's a little bit harder to control the weapon. But the interesting thing is that there's still this line between the center of the target and the head that we had in the live version, but the horizontal recoil is not that strong. Let's have a look at the side-by-side comparison. Yeah, pretty much the same when you do single fire and you take your time. But for some reason in the R.O.D.E version, when I start firing a little bit quicker, the recoil becomes a lot stronger. But the horizontal recoil is alright though. Now let's check the MAC-10 in full auto and how it performs. The second shot lands a lot closer to the head compared to the MP7, but there is still this line between the center of the target and the head. Kind of like a corridor that almost guarantees you a headshot. In full auto though, it's a lot harder to control the recoil, and bear in mind I'm compensating a lot here with the mouse. Is that going to be the same in the R.O.D.E update though? Yeah, look at that. It's perfect line between the center of the target, the shoulders and the head. And it's amazing. It's really hard to compensate the vertical recoil, but the horizontal recoil on the MAC-10 is not that strong. Let's have a look at the side-by-side, but honestly, I feel like the MAC-10 is getting better with the R.O.D.E version. I really feel like the MAC-10 is going to be a strong weapon in this update. And bear in mind, like, right now you're looking at the weapon without any attachment. I'm comparing both weapons with the same setup. So imagine the MAC-10 with maybe a flash hider or a compensator or maybe a red dot. That would be amazing. I did test the shotgun because why not? I don't think it really matters. I don't think there will be any horizontal recoil on this weapon, but I thought, you know what, let's just have a look because you might ask for it. In live version, it just feels normal. And honestly, I don't think there is any difference with the R.O.D.E version. I don't really feel any strong horizontal recoil or anything. And I think if we do the side-by-side comparison, we will see that the grouping is very much the same. Right, it's yeah, Yeah, maybe it goes a little bit more towards the right side in the R.O.D.E version. No, it's the same. It's honestly the same. Okay, let's check the Glock 17, because although there is no full auto mode, it's not a Glock 18, you can still fire pretty quickly. And in single fire, this weapon is extremely deadly, especially if you do headshots. In the live version, the vertical recoil is very strong, but there is no horizontal recoil. Now, what about the R.O.D.E version? Again, single fire, center of the target, perfect. Nothing to say. And as I start firing a lot quicker, it feels like I had a lot more control on the weapon. So this is very interesting. So in the live version, I had a stronger vertical recoil, but no horizontal recoil. So that was this straight line from the center of the target to the head. In the R.O.D.E version, when I started firing a lot quicker, I had a lot less vertical recoil, but obviously the horizontal recoil, so a lot harder for me to actually get a nice grouping. As for the Deagle, I think it doesn't really matter, to be honest, because this weapon doesn't really have a very high rate of fire. So in the live version, it's really easy for me to get a nice grouping, even if I start firing a little bit quicker. See, it's still somewhat alright. Now let's have a look if there is actually a bit of horizontal recoil in the R.O.D.E version. Not that it would matter so much, but so far so good. The single fire mode is the same. And when I start firing a bit quicker, it's the same. Yeah, let's have a look at the side-by-side. But I think it's very much the same. I don't think the Deagle changed so much. But there is no attachment on this one. Maybe it would be different if I had a hollow sight and maybe the silencer, which makes the weapon heavier, but overall it's pretty much the same. So overall, I think this updated recoil and horizontal recoil systems are pretty interesting. It removes some of those guaranteed headshots you would get with some weapons in full auto. You know, those perfectly aligned shots between the chest, the shoulder area and the head. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the new recoil systems and the new sound effects as well, because many weapons are getting new sounds. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider leaving a like. It's one of the best ways to support the channel right now. Fight the YouTube algorithm and help other people find my channel and videos. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to do so. I mostly cover realistic and tactical games in videos with high production value. I'm Hotrod of the R.O.D.E Foundation. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.